Congratulations to you both. This is such a fun movie and I really, really enjoyed it. I want to start with probably the most important question, what is your favorite Beanie Baby?
The snake. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. The purple monkey that hits the camera in the crash scene.
Such a good scene.
Yeah. And I really like the ghost, Ava's ghost in the film.
I have to say Spooky was one of my favorites too by the end of it. Damian, you have a composing and sort of music video directing background, while Kristin, you've primarily acted as like a screenwriter. How did these backgrounds really help you prepare for directing your first feature?
On the one hand, we never could have made this without already knowing what we wanted to make. On the other hand, nothing can prepare you for this, and so they didn't.
But luckily, it was a great opportunity to marry our two skill sets into what we say all the time, like what we made together is so much better than what either one of us could have done individually. And that was really very fun to experience. We have completely different brains, but very similar instincts. And so we managed to meet.
We just get there in different directions.
We get there in different directions.
I start from the end and work towards how do we get to that. She starts from the beginning and goes, what
layer
would these people do?
Yeah. So we meet in the middle.
No, I love that. Speaking of that, I feel like there's a really interesting and sort of tricky structure with this film because you jump around obviously with perspective and also with time. I was curious, was that always going to be the structure? And how did you sort of ensure that that was going to work? Because there's a lot of things to juggle with that.
The point of the film, we hope, is it's not the Beanie Babies and it's not Ty's story. It's the story of the women. And what we found in the book that we read about the real phenomenon was that there is an interesting thing that happened. It's a crazy thing that happened, but that in and of itself is mostly just a context for us. That it was astonishing how the same cycle kept happening through the story. That this really universal cycle, the female relationship to the American dream, keeps happening, and we wanted to tell have all three women on the same emotional roller coaster ride. And if we had told it linearly over the course of these 2 decades, it would have just been 3 short stories, or it would have been Ty's story about gaining wealth. And that wasn't interesting to us. What was interesting to us was that over and over again, this same cycle keeps happening. So it was important from the very beginning to structure it so that you would feel that same ride.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really shines through. There's a quote that Robbie says that I feel like really relates to this film, which is that it's the perfect time to sell a little joy. And I feel like this movie is so joyful, but it also doesn't shy away from obviously like the darker, sort of harder themes. How did you sort of try and establish that tone where you are balancing the raw truth of it, but also make a really fun watch experience?
We're so glad that's how it comes across. That is the only thing we ever want to make and consume is a sort of mixture of joy and meaning, where you are exploring things that you really care about, but you're having a good time with it too. We sometimes talk about this movie as being like a funeral for the American dream, but a New Orleans style second line parade through the French Quarter type of funeral, where there's some darkness, there's dysfunction in the story, but it's also a party. And for us, that was our North Star from the beginning. That's tonally the only way we wanted to make it.
And it's such a small bullseye.
Yeah. So everything was structured around it just because that's the only thing we know how to make. And so we're happy if that worked.
I mean, that's largely because we're too tired at the end of the day to watch something that is really heavy and painful, even if we want to get into those serious things. And we're also too tired at the end of the day to watch something that's super joyful, but feel like we wasted our time and we're not getting any meaning out of it. And it's just, it's what I've loved in pop music and what I've loved in podcasts. It's like there's those times when you really can fall in love with something because it's friendly and you love it and it can speak to you seriously. Like that's the truly, like you said, the North Star for us. And we're so lucky we found it in this thing. Like neither of us cared about Beanie Babies growing up. And no disrespect to anyone, but we basically still don't. It's just that like it's a bubble of color and joy and absurdity, like really truly crazy little facts about the weirdest things. And that the first ever consumer-facing website was made by a first generation, or I guess second generation immigrant child who is working as an intern and never got paid more than minimum wage. Like that's such a dark thing in such a bright bubble, and it is. That was what was that drew us to this in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And you spoke about color, which is something that really struck me watching it, of how bright it is. And then reading the production notes about these women's like very subtle, but very clear sort of color journeys was so interesting to me. Can you talk a little bit about establishing the color in those color journeys?
Well, we thought early on about about two things. One, we didn't want this to be a pastiche or a cliche of the 80s and 90s. We didn't want to go into that sort of like the garish colors of the time and make you feel like, ooh, everybody's wearing a Walkman. You know, like we wanted it to be a universal and slightly more organized and perfect than real life. We didn't want anyone to notice that, just have it be slightly more filmic and big, just have it feel like a fable of the time gone by. But also we really wanted to differentiate the three storylines. That without going without
different aspect ratios. Like, yeah. We didn't want it to take you out of the story. We wanted it to feel a part of it.
And we wanted that the editing between them to accelerate, so that we knew that by the time we got to the end of this, we'd be jumping around the storyline so fast that we couldn't have it be like, this one's on 16 mil and this one's like, it couldn't be really ridiculous like that. So if we gave them all the same level of intensity, but really restricted their palettes, so you're not going between different color treatments, like different cameras, her world is just always red and the different things around it, and her world's always blue and the things around it. So, and of course we chose primaries. So we have red, yellow, blue. So they build the whole universe, but you only see it one angle at a time.
And we had a massive spreadsheet of the breakdown of the whole movie with each character, with all the colors assigned to it, going all the way through. And luckily, ready and willing collaborators in our production designer and our cinematographer and our costume designer.
Not something they normally run across, apparently. Like you don't normally show up to a production meeting with a giant spreadsheet going like, okay, in this scene, you're allowed to use teal, yellow, and light purple, nothing else.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? But they hopped on board and it really worked.
It made us happy.
That attention to detail, I think, really shines through. Thank you so much for your time. I really can't wait for everyone to see the movie.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.